When a garden grinch demolishes my prized roses, I plot a gravelly revenge. Little did I know, my mischief would ignite an unexpected neighborhood rebellion against tyranny. The scene before me was nothing short of botanical horror. There she stood, Karen Whitmore, with a triumphant smile that could launch 1,000 eye rolls. The remains of my gorgeous rose bushes, my pride and joy, lay scattered like confetti on a battlefield of despair, as if my garden had been the unfortunate victim of a floral crime spree. Her garden shears glinted menacingly in the fading sunlight, and just like that, my tranquil Friday evening getaway had spiraled into a hostile takeover. "Invasive species," she had squealed, as if she were the self-appointed president of landscaping ethics. I stood there, on the precipice of fury, my calm demeanor shattered like a fragile wine glass, ready to confront the very essence of entitlement personified. How could anyone be such a bullheaded garden grinch? With my heart thumping in anger, I took a deep breath, preparing myself for the battle of words. "Karen," I hollered, channeling my inner warrior. "Those were not invasive species. They were my exquisite rose bushes, a labor of love. You didn't have the authority, nay, the audacity, to destroy them." There she stood, with her pastel pink blouse and a demeanor that seemed to scream, "I have a PhD in neighborhood tyranny." My head spun. Hadn't she already put a stop to my attempts at having a miniature Zen pond last summer? Or was it the time I got caught crafting a fairy garden in front of my porch? I could never be certain anymore, but those rosy petals were personal. My spirit was ready to wage war against this garden gremlin, and oh, how I was prepared to unleash a storm of insanity, gravel-fueled chaos. As I sulked over to my laptop, my mind was racing with one diabolically ingenious idea after another. Suddenly, inspiration struck like a bolt from the blue. Why not retaliate with gravel? I envisioned a majestic installation of 7 tons of the stuff, transforming Karen's pristine pastel prison yard into a shocking desert landscape right before her very eyes. It served her right, a bold mosaic of sparkling stones that would make any neighborhood watch gasp in horror. I could already picture her face contorting with disbelief, a moment far sweeter than any bouquet of flowers she could have trimmed. As luck would have it, Oliver had just the connections to set my plan in motion, given his propensity for both mischief and vibrant conversations with contractors. I enlisted Oliver, who practically screeched with delight at the prospect of what I dubbed Operation Gravelstorm. With a grin that was just as quirky as his vibrant wardrobe, he brought forth cunning plans alongside his endless supply of caffeinated enthusiasm. We spent hours plotting the layout, sketching designs adorned with cartoonish images of Karen's face, buried beneath a mountain of gravel. Soon enough, we had everything set in motion, a delivery truck scheduled to arrive bright and early the next morning. "The grass isn't always greener, but darn it, we'll make sure gravel is," he chuckled, slapping me on the back with an infectious energy that whipped my fear into a frenzy of excitement. As dawn broke, I slipped into my jeans and a graphic tee featuring a band so obscure that even Google needed a minute to churn out results. With Oliver at my side, we darted between the shadows, grinning like a pair of schoolboys on a grand adventure. The sound of the gravel truck rumbling toward my plan made my heart race with anticipation. We gathered our supplies and flashlights, ready to sculpt a version of frontier art that would leave Karen gaping in disbelief. As the gravel began to spill onto her pristine green lawn, it created a satisfying crunch that echoed through the air, our own soundtrack for the evening's extraordinary festivities. I couldn't help but chuckle. She'd wake up to a veritable wasteland. The shock of our audacious act transformed the evening into a comical spectacle. I could hear Oliver chuckling at the absurdity of it all as the gravel spread out in chaotic patterns. "Now she'll have to think twice before meddling in our garden affairs, huh?" he joked, his eyes sparkling with mischief. Each handful felt like a tiny victory, a rebellion against the suffocating grip of her entitled aspirations. I couldn't recall the last time I had such a thrill. We practically danced in the mangled chaos, 2 renegades giggling in the moonlight, while the sound of shovels scraping gravel echoed our triumph. With our task complete, and the shifting rocks reflecting an unexpected beauty, I turned to Oliver, exuberant. "You think she'll cry when she sees this?" Our laughter echoed against the houses like applause, until the giggling was interrupted by a distant yet unmistakable voice rising in alarm. "What is going on out there?" It was Karen, her booming presence slicing through our victorious euphoria like a gardener's blade through tender vines. I looked at Oliver, widening my eyes in a mock showdown. Surprise! Mission accomplished. Our adventure in mischief was only beginning. And little did she know that she had just unearthed a plot twist of absurd proportions. As I peeked over a mound of gravel, anticipation surged through me. What kind of madness would unfold next in my backyard saga with the self-proclaimed ruler of aesthetics? Would she mount a counterattack? Or perhaps, when faced with a desert where her verdant lawn once laid, would dignity prevail over her tyrannical reign? The night promised answers, and I was more than ready for the showdown ahead. Would she ever fathom stopping her behavior now? As Karen's voice cut through the air, I felt a surge of adrenaline kick in, amplifying the absurdity of our midnight adventure. There she was, clad in her pastel pajamas and armed with a flashlight that flickered like a beacon of authority. "Ethan Carter," she bellowed, as though invoking an army of HOA compliance officers from the depths of the neighborhood. I ducked instinctively behind a mound of gravel, trying not to laugh, as Oliver stifled a fit of giggles beside me. Her indignant tone was music to my ears, a hilarious symphony composed of outrage and bewilderment. Who knew an act of vengeance could sound so melodramatic? The moment she turned the corner, the look on her face was pure gold. Her eyes widened as she took in the shocking transformation of her pristine lawn into a rugged terrain that seemed to echo a post-apocalyptic landscape. "What have you done?" she gasped, hands flying to her chest in mock horror. Honestly, could it get any better than this? I had conjured a scene that looked like a demolition site, yet all she could muster was a spirited fit of disbelief that could rival a Shakespearean tragedy. My laughter bubbled up despite the seriousness of the moment, but I had the sense to hold it in barely. Covering my mouth, I motioned for Oliver to keep quiet, as if we were both secret agents hiding from the oppressive gaze of the gardener tyrant. In her frenzy, Karen whipped around, scanning the neighborhood for potential witnesses to her impending dramatic monologue. "Ethan, this is vandalism. You'll be hearing from the HOA," she shouted, pointing around like a cartoon character trying to rally a disastrous mob. "I can make your life miserable." The last phrase left her lips with a theatrical flourish that would have made even the most seasoned actors cringe. As she flailed helplessly amidst the gravel, I could practically hear the gears turning in her sufficiently burdened head, processing her next move. I turned to Oliver and whispered, "A little late for those threats, don't you think? Besides, how much worse can she make my life? I've just upgraded it from mildly stressed to gravelly delightful." Despite my near-hysterical laughter, I was well aware that we'd only just begun our little game of earthly chess. With our higher ground secured, I exchanged glances with Oliver, who was practically vibrating with delight. "I say we double down," he smirked, pointing at a few extra bags of colored gravel we had stashed in the back of my truck. The plan was simple yet brilliant. While Karen was busy unraveling the mysteries of her new yard, we could add a pop of blue just to really poke the hornet's nest. "Let's make her Reformation dilemma aesthetically confusing," he exclaimed, his voice tinged with mischief. I hadn't seen this side of Oliver since he'd convinced me to spray paint lawn ornaments neon last Halloween, and here we were, ready for round 2 of ridiculous antics. Without a moment's hesitation, we sprang into action. I grabbed a shovel and dove into those extra bags with reckless abandon, flinging blue stones like a confetti cannon in a bizarre celebration of rebellion. I could hear Karen sputtering incomprehensibly as she scrambled to reclaim her territory, arms waving like a referee trying to control a bad football game. "What kind of petty nonsense is this? You'll regret it, Ethan," she thundered. Meanwhile, Oliver was beside himself, hopping up and down with glee as we plastered her lawn with vibrant stones that wouldn't have looked out of place at a disco party. Each scoop was an act of defiance, a laughable reminder that beauty is subjective. But Karen's dignity was definitely taking a hit. Finally, as we stood back to admire our outlandish handiwork, there it was, a gloriously chaotic explosion of color, textures overlapping in splendid disarray. "This is art," I proclaimed jokingly, striking a pose beside a particularly reckless pile of mixed gravel. Call it the lament of the entitled lawn, or something equally pretentious. I thought I could hear the gravel itself whispering tales of rebellion, but mostly I just hoped Karen wouldn't go full on garden brigadier and call the cops. Yet somehow, the sheer absurdity of my flickering flame of defiance overwhelmed any rational fear. Art indeed, Oliver echoed, guffawing at our ridiculous creation, which looked as if a tornado had vomited style, and Karen's vigilance was now in disarray. But in that moment of unrestrained revelry, another voice pierced the air, causing us both to freeze. It was the unmistakable sound of footsteps, and behind us loomed a group of neighbors, eyes wide like deer caught in headlights. "Good morning, everyone. Just thought I'd stop by to see what happened to Karen's lawn." Tim, a fellow homeowner with an affinity for dad jokes, waved lightly. His accompanying chuckles turned into gasps of disbelief as they absorbed the ridiculous nature of our masterpiece. Suddenly, what had been an act of vengeance blossomed into a neighborhood spectacle, drawing in an audience more amusing than I could have anticipated. It looks like a landscaping project gone wrong," someone finally ventured, which sent Oliver and me into another fit of laughter. As Karen stood fuming, her authority diminished in the face of bemused neighbors, a thought flickered through my mind. What if this little escapade could spark a revolution? An uprising against the oppressive HOA rules lurking in the shadows of our quaint little neighborhood. My heart raced at the possibilities. The thought of banding together with newfound allies and defying Karen's lashings felt like a grand adventure waiting to unfold. Would they join our side, or would Karen be fueled enough by her embarrassment to wage a retaliatory war? The landscape of our community was evolving, and when the dust settled, or rather the gravel settled, would our rebellion cement a new order? Let the games begin. As the crowd gathered, I felt a rush of exhilaration that eclipsed my earlier glee. Tim, the unwitting ringleader of our eclectic audience, stepped forward with a grin that seemed to invite conspiracy. "So, Ethan, is this the new trend in lawn care?" he quipped, raising an eyebrow at the kaleidoscope of gravel that now dominated Karen's formerly pristine patch of grass. Laughter erupted, and I seized the moment. "Absolutely. It's called gravel chic, and I highly recommend it for anyone seeking an avant-garde approach to landscaping." My heart raced, not just at the laughter, but at the flicker of camaraderie igniting among my neighbors. The energy was infectious, and the disparate neighbors who had once only passed each other on the street began to murmur in delight. Karen, caught in her melodrama, flared her arms again, this time attempting to reclaim her dignity as a crusader of the HOA. "This is disgraceful. How can you all support such backyard terrorism?" Her voice trembled with indignation, and the word terrorism had an oddly comedic ring to it, like a poorly acted villain from a soap opera. My sense of defiance simmered, morphing into something greater, a movement of sorts. Perhaps these neighbors, once drones of HOA compliance, could be coaxed into seeing reason, or at least some humor in the absurdities surrounding us. "Backyard terrorism," I mused aloud, glancing at Oliver with a wink. "It sounds like a new genre of punk rock, doesn't it?" With that, Oliver and I launched into an impromptu performance, mimicking exaggerated expressions of anguish at the thought of Karen's once perfect lawn being sullied by colorful debris. The neighbors cheered and hollered with approval, adding their own playful jabs at the absurdity of their once heroic neighbor turned laughingstock. Soon we had morphed the scene into an impromptu comedy show, fueled by our absurd circumstances. I could hardly believe it. What had begun as a night of mischievous retaliation had evolved into community therapy. As we riffed on the HOA's ironclad reign over our personal spaces, I caught sight of Karen's disbelief transforming into a grimace of fury. She was clearly torn between sparking an avalanche of complaint and attempting to huff away from her ever-growing audience of amusement. "You think this is funny? Wait until the HOA hears about this," she shouted. But behind her imposing presence, I sensed an undercurrent of panic. Clearly, this was not the reception she had envisioned for her late-night theatrics. My neighborhood allies, in their colorful array of personalities, had turned the tide, and I reveled in the sweet sting of our shared rebellion. The laughter and camaraderie ignited a spark that I hadn't anticipated, creating a sense of unity that felt entirely surreal. One neighbor, Sheila, an older woman with a penchant for crochet, offered a surprising suggestion. What if we all band together and plant something beautiful right in the middle of this gravel wasteland? I blinked at her, the wheels in my head turning wildly. You mean a garden, right? A thriving nexus of floral defiance against HOA tyranny. I could practically hear the gears of artistic inspiration grinding in my mind as the idea ripened. What if we turned Karen's misery into a flourishing patch of colorful flowers, uprooting her claims to aesthetic superiority once and for all? Tim chimed in. If we all contributed a flower or two, we could transform this disaster into a riot of color. The thought took hold like wildfire, sending shivers of excitement racing through my body. With every exuberant shout of agreement, I could see the gears shifting in my neighbors' heads, their spirits lifting from the clutches of conformity. There was no denying it now. This was our moment to embrace our individuality and declare our freedom from the dictates of lawn. Perfectionism. I turned to Oliver, his scruffy beard twitching with the thrill of a shared rebellion, and we exchanged determined glances. This could become a true community project, I exclaimed. As the ideas bubbled up, the sounds of gravel crunching underfoot turned into a symphony of positivity, and it was infectious. Karen, on the other hand, stood growing smaller before our united front, her confusion palpable as our laughter echoed in the surrounding homes. Count me in, volunteered another neighbor, holding up a bouquet of wildflowers she had snipped from her own garden. I have some sunflowers that could really brighten this place up. Another joined in, daring us to go against HOA regulations with the same zeal as opening a can of soda. Who adds gravel and flowers? He laughed, throwing his hands in the air. Laughter rang out, filling the street with hope and determination. And just like that, a revolution was brewing, one that would reclaim our yards, our joy, and ultimately, our sanity. As I looked at the colorful debris that once represented my retaliation, it now held the promise of a joyful garden, a swirling tapestry of life where Karen's control would wilt beneath the sun. Without another thought, I raised my hand in the air, the gravel standing defiantly beneath me. So, who's with me? Let's turn this gravel graveyard into a flower fiesta and give Karen something to really complain about. The cheers that erupted were like music to my ears. This was not just a protest. It was a celebration of community, of freedom, and perhaps of every wildly beautiful quirk that made our neighborhood unique. Could this truly be the start of something audacious and delightful? Just as I was about to bask in the glory of my newfound camaraderie, Karen's voice pierced through the air, sharp and accusing like glass shattering under pressure. You think you can just waltz in here and destroy my property like some sort of neighborhood barbarian? She puffed out her chest, her platinum lock flying wildly as though caught in a wind tunnel, but the effect was lost on our energized crowd. Instead of fear, a ripple of amusement washed over us, creating a shared giggle that crescendoed into roars of laughter. A chilly gust swept by, hinting that we might have a legal battle ahead. But for now, the thrill of rebellion coursed through my veins like caffeine. Who knew that a splash of monochrome gravel could transform us into freedom fighters? I think you might be overestimating the importance of a patch of grass, Karen. I couldn't hold back my smirk, which somehow grew broader with each passing moment. It's not like we've built a bunker or something. The crowd let loose another howl of laughter. I could sense the tide of confidence swelling. I turned to Oliver, who was practically vibrating with excitement. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could organize a community garden, like group therapy, but with flowers and slightly less angst? The idea floated through the air, buoyed by giggles, and suddenly it didn't feel like a ludicrous notion at all. It felt like a glorious plan taking shape. After all, we weren't just rising against a gravel mishap. We were creating something joyful, vibrant, and entirely ours. While I busily envisioned the magnificent plot blooming at our feet, Tim stepped forward affirmatively. "I can bring my tiller," he announced proudly, puffing out his chest like a boy in a superhero cape. "And I think I can convince my mom to donate some heirloom seeds." The idea sparked a round of oohs and ahs, as if he'd just revealed buried treasure. I could see others nodding in self-approbation, feeling suddenly emboldened as we shared hopes and aspirations that had been squelched by Karen's iron grip. There was magic building amongst the sea of laughter and camaraderie, a desire to go beyond mere vengeance, morphing it into something productive, lively, and more importantly, ours. The energy brewed and bubbled, as neighbor after neighbor began tossing out flower suggestions like candy at a parade. "I've got some daffodils," Sheila offered, her crochet skills likely extending to the cultivation of lively blooms. "And peonies," another chimed in. "You can't go wrong with those." Between the excitement and the chit-chat about watering schedules and sun exposure requirements, it felt like a legitimate planning committee session. That was until Oliver broke the seriousness with, "Wait, should we name the garden? What about Karen's demise?" This sent us into fits of laughter once more, the camaraderie morphing into a delightful, cohesive whirlpool of creativity and sarcasm. As we brainstormed, my imagination soared higher. A colorful banner welcoming all would be gardeners, a whimsical gnome holding a sign that read, "Fight the HOA, plant a flower," and sculptures created from repurposed household items that could double as bizarre art pieces. The possibilities unlocked an essence of pure exuberance. Suddenly, our mission felt less about annoying Karen and more about reclaiming our right to self-expression and individuality, commonplace joys stifled by rules and rigid expectations. If we decorated the gravel graveyard with beautiful chaos, we would be sending a message that echoed far beyond our little neighborhood. Just as our plans were aligning into something spectacular, I remembered Karen, who stood stone-faced, her fuming aura shrinking against the cascade of laughter and creativity exploding around her. The way she glared at us, almost as if we were her personal henchman gone rogue, was as comical as a reality TV villain confronted by a mob of street performers. I turned to face her, feigning contemplation. "What do you think, Karen? Should we throw in some tulips just to tickle your refined aesthetic?" The burst of laughter that followed was enough to rattle her, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a hint of frustration give way to intrigue. After all, who would resist the charm of a flamboyant garden party in the face of HOA tyranny? That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon like some cartoonish villain defeated, our plans solidified into action. The collective laughter and shared enthusiasm had transformed Karen's lawn from a site of rebellion into a canvas of creativity, waiting for the first brushstrokes. In what began as defiance against gardening conformity, quirky designs and bright flowers would become a celebration of our connection, one that ground us together through thick and thin. The adventure had just begun, but with laughter lighting the way, our new garden wouldn't just symbolize our unity. It would blossom into a wild and defiant statement. Would we see Karen transform from a mere antagonist to a surprise participant in our sprawling, vibrant dream? The next day, the sun rose like a glorious spotlight, illuminating our makeshift gravel wasteland, which now bore the shocking title, Karen's Wild Encampment. Oliver had suggested we commandeer the gnome idea into a full-on motif of bizarre yard art, leading to a spectacular brainstorm that included inflatable flamingos wrestling with yard flamingos for dominance. The goal? Hover over Karen's turf until we could send her packing with an undignified yodel of retreat. We began gathering old items from our basements, battered bicycles, forgotten garden gnomes, and even a giant inflatable unicorn that Tim swore was retro cool. My heart raced as I imagined the hilarity that would soon unfold, each item a beacon signaling our triumph over HOA monotony. What we lacked in flowers, we would make up for in sheer creative chaos. As the day progressed, it felt as though I had become a conductor leading an orchestra of delightful absurdity. My neighbors rallied behind me like a joyful army. Everybody embraced the bizarre charm of the project with open arms. Sheila, previously the quiet lady who roamed the street with a pair of dubious garden gloves and few friendly smiles, emerged donning a dazzling pair of sequined gardening pants she once called vintage. "These are coming back, Ethan. You just watch," she declared with a twinkle in her eye. The entire neighborhood buzzed with a newfound spirit, camaraderie springing forth as brightly as any flower you'd ever seen. A flurry of laughter danced through the air, punctuated by mischievous plans to outwit Karen at her own game. And outdid ourselves. We did. Within mere days, our chaotic collection of lawn art, grew impressively, each addition eliciting gales of laughter from our crew. Someone spray-painted a traffic cone a bright purple and slapped a sticker that read, "Karen's Waste Management," across it. Then came a majestic scarecrow that bore a striking resemblance to our fears of HOA meetings. It sported a clipboard, a permanent frown, and an honorary title of Keeper of the Gravel. We were living in an unrelenting state of creativity, each surprise and joke nudging our collective spirits skyward. It was like we had stumbled into a community theater performance gone wonderfully off-script. How could we ever go back to the drab and gray existence that Karen had imposed upon us? Then came the day we finally unveiled our masterpiece to the world, or, at the very least, to the HOA Compliance Committee. We knew we had pushed every limit, defied every expectation, and bloomed in glorious rebellion. A little crowd had gathered outside their headquarters, as they surely had heard of the raucous spectacle unfolding in the space previously dominated by Karen's overwatered lawn. Inspired, Oliver and I donned silly sun hats and held a press conference, complete with a fake microphone that I had discovered in an old toy box. "Ladies and gentlemen," I declared dramatically, "welcome to the grand reveal of the Garden of Laughs." Our neighbors erupted with applause, their enthusiasm echoing off the stale walls of HOA conformity. Just as I finished my proclamation, a familiar figure emerged from the shadows, her platinum bun shining like a beacon amid all the ruckus. Karen stamped towards us, arms crossed, her expression a storm cloud threatening imminent precipitation. Yet, beneath the cracked surface of her angry facade, the slightest hint of curiosity flickered in her eyes, as if she couldn't help but be intrigued by our audacious spectacle. I leaned into the theatrics. What was the phrase? "When life gives you lemons?" I raised the ridiculous oversized gnome shield we had painted pink and adorned with glitter. "We turned them into a carnival." Cheers erupted from the crowd, the energy surging higher, weaving a fabric of rebellion and belonging. "Ethan Carter," she exclaimed with a shrillness that rattled the gnome. "You think this is amusing?" Her voice, I assure you, could send chills through the hottest of summers. She looked at our magnificent mess, brows furrowing deeper with each passing second, and I was struck by the comedy of the situation. Her lawn had become a festival while she stood at the epicenter of it all. I chose to respond with a playful innocence. "Is it humor? Or is it art, Karen? Only time will tell." And before I knew it, the laughter bubbled up again, the crowd continuing to revel in this unexpected twist of fate. Would she dare to join us in our raucous garden jamboree, or would she linger, forever marked as the almighty HOA of our whimsical charade? In what felt like a burst of cinematic magic, Karen cracked a smile. Perhaps it was the collective energy, the absurdity of the giant pink gnome looming over everything, or the wild and raucous delight of the moment. Whatever it was sparked a flicker of something utterly uncharacteristic. "I suppose I can allow it, if it remains aesthetic," she conceded, her tone teetering between reluctant compliance and begrudging acceptance. The neighbors erupted once more into a raucous cheer, infectious giggles radiating from deep within spite turned joy. As her bouncy laugh echoed through the air, vibrant chaos filled the space around us, signaling a new chapter rather than a battle. Who would have thought that an HOA Karen could become part of our whimsical world? Our wild journey had reignited more than just imagination. It turned isolation into camaraderie, pettiness into laughter, and rivalry into delightful cooperation. I savored this moment, standing alongside my unconventional crew while the blooms of laughter fluttered through the air like the colors erupting on our canvas of rebellion. Perhaps next, we'd plant a patch of roses in honor of Karen's growing acceptance. Would flowers soon blend with gravel in unexpected harmony? Who knew? But one thing was certain. Our garden was just the start of a vibrant revolution.